Well, good morning, everybody. I thought we'd just get to the biggest question, I think, on a lot of your minds this morning, which is, am I excited about the new movie Twisters? I'm sure, like all of you, I saw in the Super Bowl last night the advertisement for the remake, or not the remake, but I guess the next movie in the evolution of the Twister, I guess might be a series now. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's kind of fun. Now, the first one came out when I was 16 years old, back in 1996. And I used to have, when I was teaching at the University of Illinois, an entire 75-minute lecture where we kind of walked through the science of the movie Twister. What was funny is as I continued to age, but my students, always stayed 18 to 22, I realized that fewer and fewer of them had actually seen the movie. So this one's going to be a new one. I think a lot of college professors that teach weather courses and are going to have fun with this one. I just want to tell you one thing about the original Twister. Okay, it's a fantastic movie. Of every movie I've ever seen based on weather, it is by far the most scientifically representative. Now, let me make sure you understand what I'm saying. I still made a 75-minute lecture about all of the bad science in the movie Twister, but of all movies that have something to do with weather, big blockbusters, it is by far the best. And I think it will always stay that way in my mind. Don't even get me started on some of the stupid movies like Geostorm and Day After Tomorrow, and we could go on for hours and hours about it. But it is kind of fun just to see something new like this come out. On a more serious note here, though, I do want you to understand that when I think about this upcoming spring forecast and early summer forecast, there are some things that have me concerned about elevated risk of severe weather. And given the evolution of El Nino transitioning to neutral, maybe even La Nina by summer and fall, I am worried about the risk of very active hurricane season. Entirely different, not tornadoes, right? Those are hurricanes, but we'll be on the lookout for this. Okay, let's get into it today. This is still our main story. Since the beginning of the year, we've had really strong subtropical flow for a long time. And most climate reporting districts in the country are in the wetter half of the distribution, some of them very wet. We're still waiting on the polar jet to arrive in this area. As we talked about on Friday, there are a few shortwaves sneaking through the northern plains to bring in some precipitation in the next week to 10 days, but it is not the kind that's going to outdo the drought that's in this area that's been developing, nor is it going to be there to lay down so much snow that we're going to all of a sudden revive a snowmobile season or something like that. I also want to pay close attention to what's happening in West Texas, New Mexico, and then again right here along the Carolina coast, which we'll talk about in a few seconds because of the storms that are on their way there. First, quick recap of the weekend. This was the last 72 hours of total accumulated snowfall. Now remember, this was through 7 p.m. last night. All right, so what we're seeing here was, the low that emerged out of the Four Corners states. I think we saw an over forecast of the snow in through here, but maybe an under forecast of how much the snow fell down here. Pretty far south, this is in and around Lubbock. Some places you're picking up quite a bit. Pretty rough go of it along the Front Range over the weekend as well, as the upslope flow produced some, very, very heavy snowfall totals. From there, I do want to show you, I'm excited to see what this map looks like by the end of the week. Remember, we talked about it last week, seeing improvements across the west, which we have seen. But given the storm system that's going to be rolling basically out of Texas and Oklahoma this morning, but making its way toward New England, we could put down quite a bit of heavy snow right here in parts of New England, which we'll talk about in a moment here. But still, the significant deficit areas stretch right in through here, and of course in the northern plains, back into Montana and parts of the Pacific Northwest. Those are all areas that need to see, the return of some new type of flow. And the weekend model trends gave me a hint at that. I can't wait to show it to you in just a few moments here. But let's get into the total precipitation. This was the weekend's rainfall totals here, or total precipitation here. So this includes both liquid and solid. So this is all snow, and this was all very heavy rainfall. And in addition to this, we saw some pretty nasty storms roll through there. If I kind of walk you through it, this is what we had in terms of storm reports on the 9th. If we go to the 10th here, if we look down here, we can see numerous reports of large hail in parts of central Texas, plus a strong wind report in Mississippi. But let's go on over to the 11th. So this would be our most recent reports. And last night had a tornado reported, plus a lot of strong winds and more large hail down here coming out of eastern Texas into Louisiana. And just taking a look at some satellite data, this is the low we're going to keep an eye on. So it's moving out of Texas and Oklahoma last night. Let me show it to you yesterday here. On Sunday, we can see some of the snow on the back side of this. but in the infrared, we can watch that system really invigorate in the overnight hours. And it is a bit farther south than forecast last week. And that's important for where the heaviest snows might be as it works its way toward the mid-Atlantic and eventually toward New England. But I was watching the lightning data early this morning, and you can see here that we had, just in the last 2 hours, nearly 50,000 strikes across parts of the southeast. And there's a pretty potent squall line of thunderstorms that's rolling through this area early this morning. And that's why, as of 5:35, we did have the flood watches. We had the tornado watch that was down farther to the south. And we're going to keep an eye right into here where there's these winter weather advisories, plus a winter storm warning that's out for Arkansas and Missouri and a little bit of Oklahoma. And then winter storm watches, winter storm warnings that have been placed in parts of Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. We're hitting a big area right in through here with potentially some very, very heavy snow. After this, we're going to go back to a reset in the west, but there is a bit of a change in this pattern that I think is going to be important to discuss. But let's kind of walk through this near-term system here. So today we do have the risk of severe storms over the southeast, a large area that's under the slight risk, and the moderate risk makes it all the way up to almost Virginia here with respect to where we can see the severe weather. And on the snowy side of this, let's just walk through what the WPC has. I'll spend more time on the west in just a moment, but I'm going to zoom in here and take a look at New England. All right, so coming out this morning here, rolling through parts of the Ohio Valley, and then into this part of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, this hitting some major cities here. This is the chance of 2 inches, and this is the chance of 4. Now, what's going to be very challenging about this forecast is finding that rain snow line. It always is. The southward trend in the weekend model runs means that we may not be able to draw as much warm air off of the ocean as normal, and that's what's bringing that snow line farther and farther toward like New York City, just as an example. Let's go from 4 inches up to 8 inches. You can see that there's an 80% chance of grabbing 8 inches of snow in through here. One place picking up over a 90% chance. And if we look at a foot, this is what the models have. So notice that that's north of the major part of New York City and Long Island, but really stretching right in here toward Boston. Now, the chances, again, of getting over a foot have really increased over the weekend. And just something to think about. There was a stat I used to have, and I hope it's still relevant. But in New York City, every inch of snow cost the city about $12 million to remove. So these major metropolitan areas out east have to have large budgets to get rid of the snow. And I think what they normally do is they either dump it into the east or the Hudson to get the snow out of there. So this is a pretty significant event rolling through here just in the next couple of days alone. From here, let's go have a look at the high-res NAM just to get some sense of timing. So this is starting at 6 a.m. this morning. And as I play this forward through the middle of the day, again, a lot of storms down here in parts of the southeast. Locally, very heavy rainfall and the risk of hail. There's the risk of tornadoes, and there's also the risk of strong straight-line wind damage. So very active early today through midday today and this afternoon. You can see where the models are trying to put down snow. Now remember, the NAM is just one solution of this. We can see maybe there in parts of western Tennessee, Kentucky, rolling through central Tennessee. So maybe Nashville, you could get a flip over to some snow. But then it will be how this transitions tonight. The timing is everything. Overnight is key. And right now, this is where the NAM puts that rain snow line by 4 a.m. tomorrow on Tuesday. Because of the southward trend, we're bringing more of that snow, again, farther to the south. We have some cold enough air behind it to give us some lake effect snow. And we'll talk about the clippers that are going to roll out of the kind of parts of the Rocky Mountains here into the northern plains in a few moments as well. But this system should be done up the East Coast by, Tuesday afternoon and evening. And then behind it, some lake effect snow sneaks in. Now notice what's going on in the west. It's coming out of Montana, sliding into South Dakota. We do have a pair of short waves that are going to sneak through this area with enough cold air to possibly, drive in some snow into some key areas that need to pick up more. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to put a lot of our attention back in the west after this. This is just the next storm system sitting off the coast by midday Wednesday. Now, I want to show you what the National Weather Service out of New York tweeted out this morning. This is their forecast, right around the city. So there's going to be a pretty impressive gradient. You notice here, 4 to 6 inches possible across Long Island, but as you get farther inland, 12 to 18. And I really love it that they have very active Twitter presence. This is a great thing that the National Weather Service does. But why don't we walk through the models here real quick and just take a look at this event, and we'll look broader in a few moments. So snow starting, again, this is early Tuesday morning, playing through Tuesday midday and evening. And that's what the European model has painted right now in terms of your snowfall out of this system. Let's go from here over to the GFS. We have the 6Z running, but I'm going to compare it to the 0Z just so we're consistent. And again, we can kind of see that same scenario, but much higher snowfall totals coming out of the GFS. So take a quick look at that. I then want to take you back to the National Weather Service. They have their own product, the National Digital Forecast Database. So this would be more in line with what NOAA would put on their website, weather.gov. And you can see just through the next 37 hours, that's what we've got in terms of total snowfall. So I did want to show you just a few different model runs here for what's expected. Again, I would kind of land on this one as being most representative of what I think could be coming through. All right. Okay, from here, let's take you just a bigger picture view of things. What has changed in the newest updated data is that we see by Tuesday into Wednesday, as that deep low exits, we end up getting this like omega look to the pattern. It's going to be hard to call it a block because it's got to stay there for at least 10 days. But this is the setup that's sending more of these little short waves out of the Canadian prairie into the northern plains. And as we just play this forward into Wednesday and Thursday, look at these systems sneaking along the US-Canada border. Now, a week ago, or even last week on Friday, it was not able to resolve the amplitude of that ridge. And that's why we see more activity here than before. But if we play past Thursday into Friday and Saturday, this is when we start to get into some nice cold air here, highly amplified flow. Look at that. And as a result, this is going to drop some pretty cold air back into a place that's not seen some cold air in a while. Now, as I mentioned, the west is going to go in a bit of a reset. There's still the stronger subtropical jet coming around the base of this trough of low pressure right here. And as it does so, we're going to hit the west starting like this weekend, really the end of this weekend, with probably multiple systems that are going to come through Friday through next Wednesday. And then look at this. This is really kind of interesting. As we get out there to the 23rd, I'm interested in that. Now, what is it? This is the farthest north I have seen the kind of the squeeze being put in the atmosphere with respect to temperatures to crank the jet. We've had subtropical jet stream flow for a long time. That is polar. And what's important about that is as we go past the 23rd into the 24th and 25th, this could potentially set us up toward the end of this month with more polar jet interaction. See, the ridge is now pushing into the Aleutian Islands. And that particular setup is one that, I don't know, I haven't seen it in a long time. So we are going to spend time each day this week watching the evolution of this and what it could mean for the end of February and the beginning of March. Seeing patterns like this showing up in March just tell me to tell you that we need to be prepared for a very active March, one that could produce a lot of severe weather in the southeast and a lot of wet weather from the west all the way to the Midwest. That is a look that we can't ignore. All right, with that as the setup, let's go to our multi-model analysis, the GFS versus the European, and let's just play this forward. We've already watched through here with the thunderstorms in the southeast, the heavy rain coming into parts of the Carolinas and Virginia, and then the snow. So this is 6 a.m. Tuesday, just taking a look at where they've got the rain snow line in the GFS versus the European, and then we'll play this on forward and get that system out. Now remember, the omega block is in place. Not block, forgive me. The omega pattern, it's not a block. And what this is going to do is drive a few waves, watch right here, on Tuesday, getting into Wednesday. Look at that. See him just kick that little system through there? That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, kicking that through somewhere through the Great Lakes. And there's high pressure coming in the backside of this. And what that means is we're going to push some flow up against the mountains, that equals snow, and drop some colder air in by the end of this week. And look at that. Now, the position of the high pressure is already by Friday in two entirely different places. The GFS is like, put it here. And the European is like, no. It's much farther to the south and much more elongated. That's the main cause for the difference in the precipitation you see here, but not in the European. The high pressure placement is key. So this is now Saturday, getting into Sunday this week. Big front clears all the way to the Gulf Coast right there, and that's when the colder air finally gets in. Now we need to ask how long it's going to be there and what follows it. We know what follows it in the Pacific. Remember, I told you by the end of this week and the weekend, the Pacific goes active again with multiple storm systems. So here's one watch. Friday night to Saturday. This is getting into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's several systems coming into the western United States that will be following that. They're going to add up quite a bit of precip. So I wanted to add it all up for you. This is the high-res European model total accumulated precip through next Sunday. Remembering that what you've got in there in California is mostly coming at the end of this week into early next week. But that's total from the European. This is total from the GFS. ECMWF, GFS. And comparing the two, I just want to make note that the Euro is wetter in California. The GFS is wetter on the whole northern side of both of these next systems, and also it's trying to kick off bigger storms in the southeast. So that's an important difference. Usually we call the European the wetter model, but the GFS is a bit more amplified in this pattern. In other words, the waves are just more north-south stretched, and that's why it tends to just be more invigorated to kick off better precipitation in those areas. Okay, on the snow side of it, let's go ahead and add this up. This is the newest update from the European model. That southward trend, I mean, my goodness, look at this. You know, this at one point was much farther to the north, delivering some snow. That's just through 78 hours, which takes us through Thursday. Let's play it through the weekend and stop it out there at 1 week. There we are. Now remember, it's at the end of the time period that the west starts to really add up its snow. But this is the main system we're going to keep an eye on here, plus the one coming across the Great Lakes. So this is the GFS. That's the European, and this is the GFS. Take note of this in the GFS. We got to watch that one carefully. When is that coming in again? Right here. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's definitely in the GFS. We're going to watch the model trend all week just to keep an eye on how this positions in this area. Now, is there any analog support for it? Well, this is the chance of getting an inch of snow. Let's just add it up. There, that little wave is coming through there. Again, when is that coming through? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if I take you out there to a full 10 days, we're just going to go ahead and add up who gets an inch out of this. Now, let's go to 3 inches. Again, we'll keep an eye here, but we know about this already. And let's go ahead and step it up to 6. And remember, when I step this up even higher, we're going to start to see the next systems coming in the end of this week and the weekend and early next week, adding more snow to the Cascades in Sierra Nevada and parts of the Rockies. There's a chance for 18 and even up to 2 feet. So keep an eye on the change in this pattern out to week 2. Now, to show you that again, it's this piece of the subtropical jet that comes in. But watch. Going from next Monday out into next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. There it is. That's what I am very interested in seeing. I'm going to take you out to the 24th. Look at this. Jet retracts. There's a split here and here. That's your subtropical piece. This is new. That right there. And that is, I mean, this is the farthest west I've seen a split in the jet stream forecast by the models all winter. It's always been, I mean, at times it's been in the midsection of North America. So what could this do to start off March? That we'll have to talk about this all week. I'm kind of excited about it because this is something new, just a new look. So what do we get? Well, because this change isn't coming till the end of the month, the week 2 forecasts are still favoring, subtropical flow coming into California. They're wet in all 3 models. And you can see drier interior simply because at this point, the strongest flow is way down here like this. Wow, that's a bad drawing. But as a result, we get most of our activity coming in the west with that pattern for week 2. It's after that I expect there to be a change. Now, speaking of change, we are finally going to ditch this. This is the first 11 days of February, looking at temperature ranks by climate district. And it's been incredibly mild. You know what this done to the snowpack, how much of it we've melted away. And it's just pretty impressive here. But things are going to change. This is just a look at the frost forecast over the next 7 days. And a couple things I want to point out. After all that mild air, we're going to drop some pretty chilly temperatures pretty far to the south and take note of the potential frost event that's in the Central Valley of California. From here, let's go look at the high temperatures. Here's today's high, getting into Tuesday and then Wednesday. So still very mild this week in parts of the Midwest. But take a look at Montana. By Thursday into Friday, high temperatures struggling to get out of the single digits into the teens here. And then as we go into Saturday, that's when the really cold air comes in with that high pressure and just dives into the midsection of the country. And then this is what the high temperatures look like on Sunday compared to average. Now the weekend model trends were kind of a bit maddening to watch. This would be the new day 5 through 10. If you could have seen this on Sunday morning's runs, my goodness, it had really dropped this cold air much farther to the south. But they kind of peeled back on that. You can see it's still anchored in parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, plus parts of Montana and North Dakota, where they could be spending several days here of temperatures maybe 20 degrees below average. But the farther out we go, the more moderation we tend to see in the pattern. And if you think that this is a bit moderated, take a look at what the European does. That's day 5 through 10. So these are the same maps. That's day 5 through 10 from the GFS. This is day 5 through 10 from the newest European. Much more mild air. And then if we just stretch it out there, day 10 through 15, it brings in much more mild air than the GFS does. So the European's like full-on return of mild air. Now, what's got me interested in this is the same time period where we get the split in the jet stream over by the Aleutian Islands. And what is this setting us up for going into March? Could we be looking at a pretty active and early start to the month of March with volatile temperatures? I mean, that's kind of how March is, but what it'll rest on, I think, has a lot to do with the MJO. So it's interesting that the polar jet returned as soon as the forecast for the MJO fell back into null space. Rather than staying way out here at high amplitude like it's been for months, the collapse of it may be what's allowing the polar jet to make a return. That's just one of the components to this. But thinking about that, let's stretch this out into a bit of a longer term forecast. The CPC on Friday released a new outlook for the end of February, beginning of March. And I have a feeling that as they produced this, there was a little bit of head scratching. And what I mean by that is we were seeing a lot of things in transition at that point, but this is what they released on Friday, and we need to take it at that value. What I want to show you is the new model runs for the month of March. We can get with the GFS extended through most of March. So this would be a 30-day outlook that starts on the 17th of February through the 17th of March. And again, what's new about this pattern is kind of this opening up of an area in through here of much more active weather. Do you see that? And I just have to question how much of the interaction between the subtropical and polar jet are going to make this all occur. This has been the most consistent forecast here and for California. But I'm going to flip this over now to the European weeklies and show you that very similar forecast. But watch this. The European goes out 45 days. So I can almost give you a full March outlook here. And this will be the big wild card. I don't know why the models went over so dry there. Because how are we going to be dry here but still keep systems very invigorated in the midsection of the country? Are we projecting are the models, I'll just show it to you. Upper air heights, 7-day, and we got to go out here to a we'll do a North America view. Are we trying to split and have everything come together here? That's going to be the question I have that could drive that precipitation pattern that you just saw. And I don't know. It's kind of wanting to do something like this, split around the west. But we got to wait. Because with the MJO and null space, while there's consistency in the models, my goodness, I think this is going to be a really challenging forecast for March. Okay, from there, I just want to remind you what Marches look like when there's an El Nino. So there's some bit of this that makes sense to me. But remember, it was wet all the way into the Mid-South and in Ohio Valley in New England, and then extremely wet down here. So we need to see just how the pattern's going to shape up at the end of February before we start to make a call on this. Okay? Now, given that I made this using all of the years where we had a moderate strength or a strong or a very strong El Nino, we needed to start questioning again maybe what these longer term forecasts might look like. So this is a quick reminder as to where we are with ocean temperatures. Now, as you look back at this, you start to see there are some very polarizing years in this. The two that just stick out in my mind, because I'm from Illinois, would be 2016 and also 1988. Now, I bring those 2 years up just so that you understand both of those years, 88 and 16, were both years following big, very big El Nino events. And as a result of that, we just need to understand that we need to understand why I was so adamant on Friday about ocean temperature patterns in the North Pacific. So can I do something with you here? I want to show you May to September when we include every single El Nino year of moderate to strong to very strong. And overall, this is interesting, as we transitioned out of El Nino into neutral or La Nina, we had a drier signal across several key areas, here and down here in parts of the southern and central plains into the Mid-South. That's May to September. Now, there's a lot of places that, when you look at all the years combined, are in the white. And I'm going to tell you something. If you kind of sit in this range, don't look at this and say, wow, I'm blue, I'm going to be super wet. Or, wow, I'm this color, the warmer colors, I'm going to be super dry. Even out here, you can be 3 inches off but have perfectly timed rain. So we have to just remember to not allow us to interpret a map like this as absolutes. Like bone dry, super wet. That's not how this works. But I need you to see why these maps are sometimes misleading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the 2016 map. Now notice, going from -3 to 3 on the previous map, okay, we're going to now go from 8 to -8 because it's just 1 year. This was a year where, look, from the Red River toward Tulsa, what a dramatic change. This is what can happen in summer. Extremely hot and dry in parts of the southeast and New England. And then super wet, right here, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. Just to pick out a few different places. Now, that year is in the analog package. So is this one, 1988. And if you look at the precipitation patterns of 1988, if I can click plot, there we go. That was just complete loss of momentum in the atmosphere. Shut it down, put a big omega block, big one, in the midsection of the country. New Mexico is happy, plenty of moisture there, but that was about it. And just understand that these are both possibilities going forward. Now, I want to show you why last week I harped so much on the northern Pacific ocean temperatures here and here. Because in 2016, where we had better moisture for much of the country, save the southeast, save parts of the south central United States, okay, again, we had El Nino ending, weak La Nina beginning, but very warm here. Then you remember 1988, which was, near record hot, brutally dry. This is what happened. You see, most years where there's cold water here and here, if you are east of the Rocky Mountains, we have major drought risk. So that is why I've been stressing, let's go back to it, that we have got to watch this and this. And as of today, I have no alarm bells going off. But if this gets colder with time, and so does this, then our drought risk doesn't increase east of the Rocky Mountains. That's all we know right now. Anything else is just speculation, made-up story. It's not real. This is it. These are our only major indicators at this point. You're like, well, what about the QBO? What about... No. Those kind of things tend to have a subseasonal aspect with the weather. So they tend to line up with other subseasonal things like the movement of the MJO, just as one example. So I'll only be able to look at these two things for the seasonal aspect of this forecast. Okay? So just another point of reference here. How about quick check on South America? This is only for Mato Grosso, but well ahead of pace on soybean harvest. So this is one area I missed. I thought we'd slow down a bit more here, but we haven't. So they're 51% harvested compared to a 5-year average of around 45%. And the safrinha corn is going in relatively quickly as well, back on kind of pace here for right about average. Certainly not near as far behind as a year ago. I want to take you to Argentina, where we saw some big storms over the weekend, and just make a point here. If we just pick a spot, I know it's going to pick this spot right here in Buenos Aires. You can see that particular spot, incredible spring rains. All right, just to kind of show you one. Let's come over here toward like Cordoba. This would be Pilar, a spot I really wanted to look at closely. All of this fantastic spring rain. Then this was that dry stretch we just talked about here. And then lately they brought rain back in. This was the rain just over the weekend. If you're curious, that is about 3 inches of rain. That's what that represents 2.5, 3 inches of rain. Whoops, sorry about that. Let's then close this and go up a little, I don't know, towards Santa Fe, maybe? I don't know, let's pick this one here. This would be along the Paraná River, a good, fantastic spring rains. Remember, 50 millimeters is 2 inches. So a lot of great events here. So the rain kind of coming through lately, kind of breaking this longer term drought that's been in place. Speaking of that, I do want to show you something. February, March, and April. If we say that 2016 is an interesting analog year, 16 was quite wet in Argentina. So what I'm looking at down here, if I could find the map, let me redraw the map for you. This area right there. What I'm concerned about is 2016, which sat right here, was above average for Argentinian precipitation. Actually made it such that we were delaying harvest in 2016 in Argentina. I only bring that up because we continue to see heavy rain forecasts in the next 10 days here. Better rains into Paraguay and very heavy rains in Brazil's northeast growing area, encroaching in on its center west. But drier in parts of the center west, including Mato Grosso and up into Para here. So just an interesting kind of setup for total precipitation over the next 10 days from the models. Last thing I'm going to show you here is the longer range outlook. This is almost all of March. Remember, late in March into April, we are concerned about this dryness creeping back in to where we grow a lot of safrinha corn. That will be a major concern. But as it stands, wetter than average into Argentina through March, and then wetter than average in the northeast growing areas is currently shown up in the models. So several things to continue to watch. Look forward to giving you another week of forecast videos, and we'll talk again in the morning. Thanks.